Imagine sitting inside the world's largest passenger aircraft, believing you're on nothing more than a routine flight home. The takeoff is smooth. The climb is normal. Everything seems perfect. Then suddenly, less than 5 minutes after leaving the runway, boom, a violent explosion rips through the left side of the aircraft. The entire plane shudders. Passengers turn toward the windows and see something terrifying. Fuel pouring out from the wing. Pieces of metal missing. Smoke trailing behind them. Inside the cockpit, things are even worse. Warning messages begin flooding the screens faster than the pilots can read them. One system failure becomes 10. 10 become 50. Then over 100 warnings appear. One engine has destroyed itself. Critical systems are disappearing one after another. And sitting inside this damaged aircraft are 469 people. Completely unaware could they even get back to the runway alive. This was a story of Qantas Flight 32, November 4th, 2010, Singapore, Changi Airport, Qantas Flight 32, bound for Sydney. It originated in London. Singapore was just a fuel stop. The aircraft, an Airbus A380, the world's largest passenger jet. On board, 440 passengers, 29 crew. Today, there are 5 pilots in the cockpit. Normally, the A380 flies with 2 pilots, but today, the captain is being evaluated. Captain Richard Champion Drespany, 53 years old, 15,000 hours in the air, former Air Force pilot. Beside him, First Officer Matt Hicks, who has 11,000 hours of flying experience, and the second officer is Mark Johnson, with a total of 8,000 hours in the air. During this flight, all 5 together, over 70,000 flight hours and years of experience. It's safe to say this experienced flight crew is highly skilled, and they've got solid knowledge. They're totally fit to handle the many challenges that come with flying the world's biggest passenger plane. For an airline that hasn't had a fatal accident since the 1950s, that's impressive. But are they ready to deal with whatever comes next and keep their spotless safety record intact? At 9:56 a.m. local time, Qantas 32 lines up on runway 20 center. The 4 Rolls-Royce Trent 900 engines spool up to takeoff power. The A380 begins to roll. Within seconds, it lifts off cleanly into the Singapore sky. The gear comes up, the flaps retract, the aircraft begins its climb. For exactly 4 minutes and 56 seconds, everything is normal. Then, 2 loud bangs from the left side of the aircraft. The plane shudders. Captain de Crespigny immediately hits the altitude hold button on the autopilot, freezing the climb at 7,400 feet. No one in the cockpit says anything for a second. Then, the ECAM lights up. The electronic centralized aircraft monitor, the system that watches every part of the plane, begins throwing warnings. The moment engine number 2 tore itself apart, several critical systems failed simultaneously. The pilots in the cockpit had no way of knowing the full extent of the damage. But the passengers seated on the left side could see everything clearly. Large holes had ripped through the wing and fuel was pouring out freely. Inside the cockpit, warning after warning began flooding the screens. The engine had completely seized, and its turbine was shattered beyond recognition. The crew immediately shut down the engine and informed air traffic control.
Singapore, Qantas 32, we require a left turn back towards Singapore.
Qantas 32, Singapore. Turn left heading 020.
Quick pause before we continue. If you're enjoying this breakdown and want more aviation investigations, accident analyses, and behind-the-scenes stories from the cockpit, make sure to subscribe. And trust me, you'll want to stay for what happens next, because the crew was about to face an even bigger problem. The biggest fear was fire. A spark could ignite anywhere near that engine. The pilots activated the fire extinguisher. Nothing happened. They tried again. Still nothing. No confirmation. No response. The fire suppression system had completely failed. The situation was now far more dangerous than a simple engine failure. After the explosion, things were deteriorating by the second. The fire suppression system was gone, and the most terrifying part was this. Jet fuel was leaking from the holes in the wing and spreading directly beneath the damaged engine. A single spark was all it would take to turn this into something catastrophic. The pilots were running out of options fast. Meanwhile, residents on Batam Island below looked up to see large pieces of metal falling from the sky. When they spotted the Qantas logo on the debris, word spread instantly that a plane had gone down. News channels broke the story within minutes, and Qantas shares began to drop. But inside that cockpit, none of that mattered. The pilots had one goal and one goal only: get 469 people on the ground, alive. Alarms were screaming continuously inside the cockpit. The screens were completely overwhelmed. Within seconds, over 100 system failure messages had appeared. The first officer began working through the checklist. This was the most severe technical emergency in the entire history of the A380. Qantas headquarters was receiving alerts one after another, but they had no way of reaching the pilots directly. The crew was being pushed beyond every limit. Every second counted. They had to decide which warnings were truly critical and which ones could wait. One wrong call, and it was over. Even after engine number 2 failed, the crisis was only getting worse. The remaining 3 engines were each struggling in their own way. Engines 1 and 4 had dropped into degraded mode, meaning their data was no longer available. Engine 3 had switched to alternate mode, which meant it could not be fully trusted. The pilots understood what this meant. If even one more engine failed, reaching Singapore would become nearly impossible. There were only 2 options left: turn back immediately and attempt a landing now, or stay airborne a little longer, work through the systems, and then land with more information. But both paths carried serious risk. Stay up too long and the fuel could run out, the hydraulics could fail, and the electrical supply could cut entirely. Land too soon without the full picture, and there was no telling whether the aircraft would remain controllable at low speed and low altitude. Inside that cockpit, the tension was climbing with every passing second. Every warning was a reminder. There was absolutely no room for error. A decision had to be made. Right now, the cockpit was under extreme pressure. The pilots were working through over 100 warning messages, trying to make sense of each one. The biggest concerns were the flaps, the brakes, and the landing gear. If any of those failed, the landing could turn deadly. The captain made the call. Returning to Singapore right now would be rushing it. The aircraft was still controllable, and there was enough fuel. Every system had to be checked first. He requested at least 30 minutes from ATC and asked permission to enter a holding pattern near Singapore. ATC approved. The first priority was understanding the true condition of the aircraft and figuring out the safest possible way to bring it home. The question now was whether the aircraft was ready for this landing or whether things were about to get even worse. The pilots reassured the passengers that they were trained to handle situations like this. But the truth was, no training in the world had ever prepared anyone for this. The shrapnel from the engine had damaged dozens of critical systems across the aircraft. The pilots were trying to piece together what was still functioning and what had completely failed. Then came another serious discovery. A key system controlling both the brakes and the landing gear had broken down. That meant stopping the aircraft after touchdown was going to be extremely difficult. One engine was already dead, and now the braking system was compromised too. If the brakes and landing gear didn't hold, the aircraft would touch down at high speed, and stopping it before the end of the runway would be nearly impossible. And the worst-case scenario, if one more engine failed, everything could unravel completely. Every second that passed was carrying this aircraft toward one of 2 outcomes: either a safe landing or another tragedy. Modern aircraft, as advanced as they are, have their limits. The instruments can only tell you so much. That's why the pilots decided to assess the damage themselves. The second officer left the cockpit and walked into the passenger cabin. As he made his way through the upper deck, a passenger, who happened to be a Qantas pilot himself, pointed to the screen mounted in front of his seat. It showed fuel streaming out from beneath the engine, and the entire rear section of engine number 2 gone. He returned to the cockpit immediately and reported what he had seen. The moment the pilots understood how much fuel was leaking, they made a decision. No more fuel would be transferred into that leaking tank, no matter what the system was telling them to do. There were several moments like this where the pilots had to choose between following the system's instructions or trusting their own judgment. This was the greatest test of their experience. 440 passengers sat quietly, watching from their seats as the aircraft moved toward an uncertain destination, holding onto one hope, that the pilots would make the right call. Under normal circumstances, fuel is dumped before landing to reduce the aircraft's weight. But this time, that wasn't possible. The fuel management system had failed, leaving the aircraft 50 tons heavier than it should have been for landing. That alone made the approach extremely dangerous. On top of that, the left wing had lost 10 tons worth of fuel through the leak, throwing the aircraft's balance off entirely. Every alert, every system failure, another layer of the problem. After nearly an hour of working through every piece of information, the crew finally had the full picture. The aircraft was overweight. The braking system was damaged. And now the hardest decision of all had to be made. They attempted to calculate the required landing distance using the onboard computer. The system failed. There were no calculated numbers, no guarantees, just experience, composure, and the weight of 469 lives. The captain called the lead flight attendant to the cockpit and instructed her to prepare the passengers for an emergency landing and a possible evacuation. Then he got on with ATC. We will require emergency services on landing. Fuel is leaking from the left wing. Now there was only one question left. Could they actually pull this off? The countdown had begun. The captain knew that before committing to the runway, he had to confirm one thing: whether the aircraft would respond to his inputs. He lowered the flaps slowly, checking the aircraft's reaction at every stage. By flaps 3, one thing became clear. The aircraft was responding, but sluggishly, far slower than normal. But the real concern was the engines. Engine 2 was already dead. Engines 1 and 4 were in poor condition, and the captain had no certainty they would hold. Engine 3 was running in alternate mode, unpredictable at best. The aircraft was now aligned with the runway. Below was nothing but open ocean. For the passengers, it was a terrifying sight. For the pilots, it was the final exam. Was the landing calculation correct? Would the aircraft stay under control after touchdown? Could they stop it before the runway ran out? 469 lives now rested on the captain's next move. One mistake, and it was all over. Moments later, the wheels made contact with the runway. The aircraft came down hard and fast. The captain applied the brakes immediately. The only engine still functioning properly was thrown into reverse thrust. The end of the runway was rushing toward them. With every passing second, the margin was shrinking. And then, the aircraft had stopped, but the danger wasn't over yet. Fire crews immediately flooded the fuel pooling beneath the aircraft with suppressant foam, making sure no stray spark could turn this into an inferno. 20 minutes after landing, buses arrived at the aircraft, and one by one, all 440 passengers were brought out safely. Through all of this, engine number 1 had continued running for 3 full hours after landing, and was only finally shut down when fire crews doused it with suppressant foam. And perhaps the most remarkable fact of all, not a single passenger or crew member sustained any injury whatsoever. The flight crew's extraordinary decision-making and teamwork had taken what should have been a catastrophe and turned it into one of the most miraculous landings in aviation history. Experts called it the finest display of airmanship the industry had ever seen. Captain Richard de Crespigny was awarded the Order of Australia for his exceptional courage that day. But one question still remained: a brand new aircraft, a flawless safety record. So how did any of this happen? The investigation revealed that a small crack had formed inside one of the engine's oil pipes. Through that crack, oil seeped onto the engine's hot internal components, caught fire, and caused a critical part of the engine to rupture from the inside. Fortunately, the debris never reached the passenger cabin. Had it done so, this would have been an entirely different story. Investigators determined that the crack was the result of a minor manufacturing defect at Rolls-Royce. When other aircraft were inspected, the findings were alarming. The same flaw existed in multiple A380 engines across the fleet. Given the severity of the risk, the engines on every A380 in service were replaced. And after that, this never happened again. In the aftermath, Qantas invested millions in repairing the aircraft and eventually returned it to the skies. If you enjoyed this investigation, subscribe for more aviation stories. And if you think this landing was incredible, wait until you hear about British Airways Flight 38, where just moments before landing, both engines suddenly stopped producing power. Click here to watch that story next, and I'll see you there.